Okay, so moving on from where we got yesterday. Recap back. We finished the last chapter with Badger and Fox hitting something that they found out to be a wall. Before you start reading today, what do you think the wall is that they've hit whilst digging? Have a little think about it. Tell someone in your house, make a prediction. What do you think that might be? A wall under the ground. Have a think about it. Tuesday the 28th of April today. We're going to be reading chapter 15 and chapter 16. As always, pause when a new page comes on and then try and read yourself if you can. If not, read along with me. Okay. Chapter 15, Bean's Secret Cider Cellar. Mr. Fox examined the wall carefully. He saw that the cement between the bricks was old and crumbly, so he loosened a brick without much trouble and pulled it away. Suddenly, out of the hole where the brick had been, there popped a small, sharp face with whiskers. "Go away," it snapped. "You can't come in here. It's private." "Good Lord," said Badger. "It's Rat." "You saucy beast," said Mr. Fox. "I should have guessed we'd find you down here somewhere." "Go away," shrieked Rat. "Go on, beat it. This is my private pitch." "Shut up," said Mr. Fox. "I will not shut up," shrieked Rat. "This is my place. I got here first." Mr. Fox gave a brilliant smile, flashing his white teeth. "My dear Rat," he said softly, "I am a hungry fellow, and if you don't hop it quickly, I shall eat you up in one gulp." That did it. Rat popped back fast out of sight. Mr. Fox laughed and began pulling more bricks out of the wall. When he had made a biggish hole, he crept through it. Badger and the smallest fox followed him. They found themselves in a vast, damp, gloomy cellar. "This is it," cried Mr. Fox. "This is what?" said Badger. "The place is empty." "Where are the turkeys?" asked the smallest fox, staring into the gloom. "I thought Bean was a turkey man." "He is a turkey man," said Mr. Fox. "But we're not after turkeys now. We've got plenty of food." "Then what do we need, Dad?" "Take a good look around," said Mr. Fox. "Don't you see anything that interests you?" Badger and the smallest fox peered into the half-darkness. As their eyes became accustomed to the gloom, they began to see what looked like a whole lot of big glass jars standing upon shelves around the walls. They went closer. They were jars. There were hundreds of them, and upon each one was written the word cider. The smallest fox leaped high in the air. "Oh, Dad," he cried out, "look what we found! It's cider!" "Exactly," said Mr. Fox. "Tremendous!" shouted Badger. "Bean's secret cider cellar," said Mr. Fox. "But go carefully, my dears. Don't make a noise. This cellar is right underneath the farmhouse itself." "Cider," said Badger, "is especially good for badgers. We take it as medicine. One large glass 3 times a day with meals and another at bedtime." "It will make the feast into a banquet," said Mr. Fox. While they were talking, the smallest fox had sneaked a jar off the shelves and had taken a gulp. "Whoa," he gasped. "Wowee." You must understand that this was not the ordinary weak fizzy cider one buys in a store. It was the real stuff, a home-brewed fiery liquor that burned in your throat and boiled in your stomach. "Ah," gasped the smallest fox. "This is some cider." "That's quite enough of that," said Mr. Fox, grabbing the jar and putting it to his own lips. He took a tremendous gulp. "It's miraculous," he whispered, fighting for breath. "It's fabulous. It's beautiful." "It's my turn," said Badger, taking the jar and tilting his head well back. The cider gurgled and bubbled down his throat. It's like melted gold," he gasped. "Oh, Foxy, it's like drinking sunbeams and rainbows." "You're poaching," shrieked Rat. "Put that down at once. There'll be none left for me." Rat was perched upon the highest shelf in the cellar, peering out from behind a huge jar. There was a small rubber tube inserted in the neck of the jar, and Rat was using this tube to suck out the cider. "You're drunk," said Mr. Fox. "Mind your own business," shrieked Rat. "And if you great clumsy brutes come messing about in here, we'll all be caught. Get out and leave me to sip my cider in peace." At that moment, they heard a woman's voice calling out in the house above them. "Hurry up and get that cider, Mabel," the voice called. "You know Mr. Bean doesn't like to be kept waiting, especially when he's been out all night in a tent." The animals froze. They stayed absolutely still. Their ears pricked, their bodies tense. Then they heard the sound of the door being opened. The door was at the top of a flight of stone steps leading down from the house to the cellar, and now someone was starting to come down those steps. Chapter 16. The Woman. "Quick," said Mr. Fox, "hide." He and Badger and the smallest fox jumped up onto a shelf and crouched behind a row of big cider jars. Peering around the jars, they saw a huge woman coming in to the cellar. At the foot of the steps, the woman paused, looking to right and left. Then she turned and headed straight for the place where Mr. Fox and Badger and the smallest fox were hiding. She stopped right in front of them. The only thing between her and them was a row of cider jars. She was so close, Mr. Fox could hear the sound of her breathing. Peeping through the crack between two bottles, he noticed that she carried a big rolling pin in one hand. "How many will you want this time, Mrs. Bean?" the woman shouted. And from the top of the steps the other voice called back, "Bring up 2 or 3 jars." "He drank 4 yesterday, Mrs. Bean." "Yes, but he won't want that many today because he's not going to be up there more than a few hours longer. He says the fox is bound to make a run for it this morning. It can't possibly stay down that hole another day without food." The woman in the cellar reached out and lifted a jar of cider from the shelf. The jar she took was next but one to the jar behind which Mr. Fox was crouching. "I'll be glad when the rotten brute is killed and strung up on the front porch," she called out. "And by the way, Mrs. Bean, your husband promised I could have the tail as a souvenir." "The tail's been shot all to pieces." "The tail's been all shot to pieces," said the voice from upstairs. "Didn't you know that?" "You mean it's ruined?" "Of course it's ruined. They shot the tail but missed the fox." "Oh, heck," said the big woman. "I did so want that tail." "You can have the head instead, Mabel. You can get it stuffed and hang it on your bedroom wall. Hurry up now with that cider." "Yes, ma'am, I'm coming," said the big woman. And she took a second jar off from the shelf. "If she takes one more, she'll see us," thought Mr. Fox. He could feel the smallest fox's body pressed tightly against his own, quivering with excitement. "Will 2 be enough, Mrs. Bean, or shall I take 3? "My goodness, Mabel, I don't care so long as you get a move on." "Then 2 it is," said the huge woman, speaking to herself now. "He drinks too much anyway." Carrying a jar in each hand and with the rolling pin tucked under one arm, she walked away across the cellar. At the foot of the steps, she paused and looked around, sniffing the air. "There's rats down here again, Mrs. Bean. I can smell 'em." "Then poison them, woman. Poison them. You know where the poison's kept." "Yes, ma'am," Mabel said. She climbed slowly out of sight up the steps. The door slammed. "Quick," said Mr. Fox. "Grab a jar each and run for it." Rats stood on his high shelf and shrieked. "What did I tell you? You nearly got nabbed, didn't you? You nearly gave the game away. You keep out of here from now on. I don't want you around. This is my place." "You," said Mr. Fox, "are going to be poisoned." "Poppycock," said Rat. "I sit up here and watch her putting the stuff down. She'll never get me." Mr. Fox and Badger and the smallest fox ran across the cellar, clutching a gallon jar each. "Goodbye, Rat," they called as they disappeared through the hole in the wall. "Thanks for the lovely cider." "Thieves!" shrieked Rat. "Robbers! Bandits! Burglars!" Okay, so your 5 quick fire questions are: Question 1. What did Fox threaten to do to Rat if he did not go away? What does the word accustomed mean on page 63? Do you think the smallest fox liked the cider? Why? Page 64, we'll use that for that. What does Badger liken the taste of cider to? You'll find that on page 65. And on page 69, what had been promised to the woman as a souvenir once the foxes had been killed? There are your sentence stems to make sure that you're answering in full sentences. Pause the video while you have a go. Okay, good job. Fox threatened to eat Rat up in one gulp if he did not go away. That was on page 62. The word accustomed means to get used to something. Okay. So they were getting accustomed to the dark. They were getting used to the dark. So when the light goes out, you can't see things straight away, but then your eyes get used to it and you're able to pick out shapes. The smallest fox did like the cider. He gasped when he drank it and said, "Wowee," which suggests that he liked and he enjoyed the taste. Question 4. Badger likens the taste of cider to melted gold, sunbeams and rainbows. That sounds delicious. And question 5. The woman had been promised the foxtail as a souvenir. But we all know, as Mrs. Bean told her, it had been shot off, hadn't it, already? Okay, question 6. How does Roald Dahl create suspense and fear in the last 2 paragraphs of chapter 15? Okay, so we'll have a little look at that in a minute. Think about how Badger felt when he first met Mr. Fox compared to how he feels now. Do you think this has changed? And why do you think it is? Okay. And question 8. If you could choose to be friends with one character from the book so far, who would you choose? Okay, think carefully about that one, and I want you to give me 3 answers. 3 reasons why you have chosen that person. So, question 6. How does Roald Dahl create suspense and fear in the last 2 paragraphs? So the last 2 paragraphs, you've got 1 there, and you've got 2 there. And that second paragraph is only a tiny paragraph, isn't it? But how does he create suspense and fear? Well, the animals froze. That gives you the impression that they are scared. Okay, so that fear comes through the vocabulary that Roald Dahl has chosen to use. Okay, they stayed absolutely still. Their ears pricked. Their bodies tense. Okay, so he's telling you, Roald Dahl is telling you exactly how the animals are standing. Okay, he's using those senses. Okay, so what they look like. Then they heard the sound of the door being opened. Okay, so that sound, it's really descriptive, isn't it? And it's building up that suspense. Another thing that adds to the suspense is this last paragraph. And now somebody was starting to come down those steps. Imagine if we had not read chapter 16. Let's cross that out. Imagine if we'd just read chapter 15 today and that wasn't there. And it said, and now someone was starting to come down those steps. That would leave it on what we'd call a cliffhanger. Okay? A cliffhanger means the author, or if you're watching a film or something, it builds up so much suspense that you really, really want to read on or you want to watch on to find out what happens. Roald Dahl's done that really well because he's told us that someone's starting to come down the steps. We know those animals should not be in that cellar, okay? So it makes us think, oh my goodness, what is going to happen to them? Question 7. Think about how Badger felt when he first met Mr. Fox compared to how he feels now. Okay. Do you think this has changed? And why do you think this is? So if we think back to the questions from yesterday, we were saying that Badger was a little bit worried, wasn't he, do you remember? Because he wasn't feeling, he felt like it was wrong. It felt like he was stealing stuff from the 3 farmers. But he seems to have changed in this chapter a little bit. Okay. You've got here, Mr. Fox and Badger and the smallest fox ran across the cellar clutching a gallon jar each. So the fact that they've got a jar each, it's that word each, it shows us that Badger is on board with this now. He is all for getting food and getting drink for his family. He believes in it and he doesn't feel bad about it. They're not stealing everything. They're stealing little bits or taking little bits to keep their family alive. Okay? So he has participated. He has got a gallon jar, of cider. Okay? And he's part of the team now. They called out. They ran and they called out. Goodbye, rat. Okay? So they're kind of working as a team. They're on the same page. You can see here as well. It's my turn, said Badger. So he's growing in confidence. He's not just seeing what Fox is doing and thinking, oh, it's wrong. He's actually joining in. Okay? He's saying it's like melted gold. Oh, Foxy, it's like drinking sunbeams and rainbows. He's understanding and he's seeing the benefits of being able to eat and being able to drink. Okay, so yesterday I think he was feeling quite, worried that what they were doing was wrong. Whereas today he's realised that it's actually quite beneficial. What they're doing is helping to save their families and their families' lives and their friends. And also it's quite delicious as well. And then your last question, if you could choose to be friends with one of the characters from the book so far, who would you choose? Okay, so you've got, let's just recap the characters. We've got Fox, we've got Mr. Fox, we've also got Mrs. Fox, we've got the the 4 Fox children, which we know about. We don't know that much about them. We know that they're very willing and they want, they listen to their dad's plans and they want to try and help. We've got the 3 farmers and we've also got Mr. Badger, haven't we? So you can choose one of those characters and you can tell me which one you would like to be friends with and why. 3 reasons why. Okay, can you email those over to us, guys, please? Thank you.
Good morning, year 3. Hope you're okay. We are starting off by marking your work from yesterday. Okay, hope you got on all right. Remember, guys, if you do get stuck, just give me an email, or if you want me to go over something else again at another point, that's fine. I can squeeze it in somewhere or put up an extra video. That is not a problem. Okie dokie. So we'll run through these pretty quickly then. I'm not going to draw out any pictures or anything for you, because I've not put them on here. So I'm going to use my purple pen, check I've got it, super. So we're going to go through these unit fractions first. So the rule was, if our numerators are the same, then the greater the denominator, the smaller the fraction. So the first one then, we've got 1/5 and 1/3. Okay, so here our our numerators are the same. They are both unit fractions, so we just need to compare our denominator. Now, if I've got a cake and I'm splitting it between 3 people, that's less people than if I'm splitting it between 5 people, which means 1/3 would be bigger. I'd much rather have 1/3 of a cake than 1/5. Okay, 1/4 is greater than 1/10, and here 1/3 is greater than 1/8. Okay, so it should be less than, greater than, greater than. Well done if you got those. Then onto the right side, where our denominators are the same, but they're not unit fractions. So I've got 2/3 or 1/3. I think these ones, I don't think they could be any easier, really. So 2/3, 1/3. Well, 2 out of 3 is greater than 1 out of 3. Okay. Then we've got 2/6 and 4/6. 4/6 is greater than 2/6, and then we've got 2/10 and 8/10. 8/10 is greater than 2/10. You guys didn't have any problems with that when we did it on the test, so I think you'd have been fine with those. Okay, if you thought you'd challenge yourself and have a go at the Duet challenge, there are multiple answers. It could have been, just double checking, yeah, there could have been 3, yeah, there could have been 7 possible answers. I think I might be wrong. Double check it. But yeah, there could have been lots of different answers for this one. So we just wanted to work out what that fraction in the middle could possibly be. We know the numerator has to be a unit, because we're looking at unit fractions for this one. They all have units as their numerators. You just had to think about the denominator. So you're thinking of a fraction that is less than 1/2 but still greater than 1/10. You could have had 1/3, 1/4, 1/5, 1/6, 1/7, all of these. Okay, these numbers are, the numbers are greater than 2, which means they will be smaller than 1/2, but they are all smaller than 10, which means they'll be greater than 10, the fraction. You could have had 1/8, and then you could have had 1/9. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep. Okay, you could have had 7 potential answers. If you've put any one of those, give yourself a tick. If you've put all of those, if you've listed them, you can tick every single one. Well done. Okay, you'll secure it then. So hopefully you all could tell Dora why she was incorrect. She was not right. So hopefully you did not agree with her. So do you agree with Dora? No, you should have said. Okay. She says that 1/3 is larger than 1/2 because 3 is larger than 2. Now we spoke about that at the very beginning. That is certainly not the case. Okay. 1/2 is greater than 1/3, okay? Because 1/2 has less equal parts, which means each part will be greater. You could have done that, you could have explained that how I've just explained it, okay? Or you could have drawn something. Now remember, if you are drawing, then your the whole amount needs to be the same. So here we go. If I shade in 1/2, we can see that that is much greater than 1/3, okay, because that's been split into more parts, which means each part's going to have to be smaller. Okay, so well done. If you said no, you get a tick for that, and if you've given me an explanation, you get another tick for that. Okay, on to the really tricky one. I'd be really impressed to see who had a go at this and who could kind of explain it or explain it really well. So which fraction is the largest? How do you know? We'll start with that bit first. So we were looking at unit fractions and fractions with the same denominator. So I'm going to firstly compare these two fractions here. All right, so 3/8, I've chosen those two because they have the same denominator. All right, so that's really, really easy. 3/8 is greater than 1/8. Okay, so I know that 1/8 is not going to be the greatest. Okay. I know that can't be the greatest. Now, we're going to have a look at 3/5. I'm just going to put 3/8, okay, and 3/5. Now here, we've not looked at when our numerator is the same. Well, our numerator is the same. So we said if the numerator is the same, now when we've looked at that, we've only looked at unit fractions. However, our numerators are the same here. So what was the rule about our denominator? Well, if the numerators are the same, then the greater the denominator, the smaller the fraction. Okay, so if 3/8, okay, we've got 3/8 and 3/5, our numerators are the same, they are both 3. So now we look at our denominators, okay? Now 8, that number itself is greater than 5, which means 3/8 is going to be less than 3/5, okay? So 3/8 is smaller. So that means our largest fraction is 3/5, okay? Because 3/5 is greater than 3/8, then 3/8 is greater than 1/8. So our smallest fraction is that one. Bit complicated, okay, but that was a really good test there to see if you could use the that rule with fractions other than unit fractions. Okay, so we hadn't had a look at that, but well done if you were able to apply that rule to there. Well done, guys. If you had a go, do let me know if you had a go. Send in an email. Okie dokie then, right. For today's lesson, we are on Tuesday and we are learning to order fractions. So pause me whilst you have a go at whilst you write down your LO, please, and your date. Okay, so we are going to be ordering fractions. Now, you'll be using your knowledge of comparing fractions to help you with this. A couple of words I do want to just refresh with you and recap is ascending and descending. Okay, when we're putting fractions in order, I'll be using some of those words in the questions. Okay, so ascending means when you are going up. So if something's going up, it's getting greater. We talked about climbing a mountain. So if you're going up the mountain, okay, so you're getting higher up, that's the same with your numbers, so the value gets higher. All right, so you start with the smallest and get bigger. If you're descending, that's when you go down. We always talk about trying to listen for things that might help us remember it. So D for down, descending. That's when you start at the top and you work down. Okay, it gets smaller, which reminds me, I think I'm going to just swap these around because that might get confusing. Yeah, I'm going to pop those there. There we go. Okay, so over here I've got a few different representations of fractions, and now we're going to have a go at ordering, and we're going to be ordering in ascending order, which means we're going to start at the smallest, we're going to start at the smallest fraction, okay, and we're going to work our way up to the greatest. All right, so we're going to start at the smallest. When we do these things in order, you can do it going up or going down, or you can do it this way. Now, sometimes you can start with the greatest and put them in order going across to the smallest, okay? But because I'm doing it with the pictures here, I'm going to do it this way, and then afterwards I'm going to do it with my little fractions there going across to show you. All right. So over here then we have got different fractions being represented. So have a quick look there for me at which fractions which. I've put them down here for you, but which one would go with which. All right, so we're going to start with the smallest. Okay, now have a look. These fractions are all what kind of fractions if they've got one on top? Unit fractions. They are all unit fractions. So we're going to start with the smallest one there. So think back to your comparing from yesterday. If the numerators are the same, we compare the denominators. If the greater the denominator, the smaller the fraction. So as smallest, sorry, the greater the fraction, the greater the number, the smaller the fraction. So which one is going to be the smallest? Now have a look at our pictures here. Okay, you can see that this one straight away has the smallest bit there. So that's one part out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is 1/6. That's going to come down here. That is our smallest fraction. Okay, what is next? Let's have a little look. Let's compare them. Okay, so the next smallest fraction is this one. Okay, and that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 equal parts altogether. So that is 1/5. So I'm actually going to, as we do this, I'm going to drag these fractions down here. I'm starting with my smallest, moving them across like that. Okay, now the next smallest fraction, have a little look for me. Okay, you should be able to see that it's this one. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, so it's split into quarters, 1/4. That's the next one. Okay, so I'm going to put that here. All right, and then the next one is this one. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3 equal parts altogether. One's coloured in, so that's 1 out of 3, 1/3. And the last one is 1/2. So we hopefully remember that from yesterday, that 1/2 is actually pretty big. Okay, so when we are ordering fractions, I mean, these are the pictures here, so it's slightly different. But when we're writing them down, a great way to do it, I find this is the easiest way so you don't get confused. If we're ascending anyway, we can do it this way and literally just write them out in a line or put them on a number line. There's a few different ways we can do it. This would have been perfect to do. Now, when we say descending order, though, so going from the greatest to the smallest, that doesn't mean we write it like this and just put greatest at the end. Okay, it means that we start with the greatest. So if we were doing it in descending order, I would start with my greatest fraction, okay, and it would get smaller. So I would literally do it this way, like so. Okay, so let's come back to this then. When the numerators are the same, the greater the denominator, the smaller the fraction. Okay, so now let's have a little go at placing these fractions on this number line. So, oh, I thought I moved those. Never mind. Okay, so I've got 2/4, 3/4, 1/4. Now here, the denominators are all the same. So which one's going to come first? Now on my number line, I've got 0, then I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 equal parts. That's one whole there, so that'll be 4/4. Where would these fractions go? So I've got 2/4, 3/4, 1/4. Okay, what's the first fraction that's going to go here? Hopefully you've all said 1/4. That's the smallest. That would be the first one. Okay. Then it goes up. You guys can all count in fractions. We did this. 2/4, and then it would be 3/4. Okay. So when your denominators are the same, the greater the numerator, the greater the fraction, or bigger the fraction. Okay. So now we've had a go at that. Can we? Where's my little bin? I'll move over there for now. Oh, no, I won't. I'll move that up there. I've got two. Oh, I don't know. Ignore me. Sorry, guys. Order these fractions in descending order. So here the denominators are the same. So now we need to compare our numerators. Now it's descending, which means it's going to go down. We start with the greatest and it gets smaller. Okay, we start at the top and work our way down. So which of those fractions is going to be the greatest? Hopefully you have all said 8/8 because that is equal to 1 whole. That's the entire thing. Okay, I'm going to cross that one off. What comes next? We're descending. We started with the greatest fraction. The next one is 7/8. Now, guys, you don't have to do this in your book. Okay, just you can talk it out. That's absolutely fine, or just say it out loud. Don't worry. Okay, 7/8. Next one, 5/8. Next one, 3/8. Which one? So now I'm literally just looking at the numerators. Okay, I'm just going for the next smallest numerator. Okay, and that's the last one. So I started with the greatest and I've descended down to the smallest. Okay, right, you'll do it then. So this is what's going to go in your book, please. You don't have to write ascending order or descending order. You can if you want to, if that helps, by all means do it. But you don't have to, obviously I can't check. But if that helps, then do. It is really important though that you get whether it's ascending or descending correctly, because that will change whether it's right or wrong, and it helps me know whether you've understood the meaning of ascending and descending. So for number 1, number 2, and number 3 and number 4, you are literally ordering those fractions. Okay, check first whether you need to be comparing your denominators or your numerators. If your numerators are the same, if they're unit fractions, then what do you need to look at and what do we know? Remember, go back, look for the little green tip at the bottom to help you if you get a bit stuck. All right. Then number 5, I've done a nice little tricky extra one there. What is the missing fraction in the sequence? So have a little look. What is the denominator in all of those fractions there? Okay, if you were to count in those fractions, which one is missing? You can just write the fraction, put number 5 and write the fraction that is missing. Okay, good luck, guys. I'll see you in a second to have a look at your secure it. So pause here whilst you do those in your book. Okay, so you'll secure it then, guys. I need to explain how easy, oh my goodness, how best to do this in your book would be. So shade the blank diagrams so the fractions are ordered correctly. Fractions in ascending order. Now, obviously you're not going to be able to shade them in because they're on the screen. So what I'd like you to do is write the fractions. Now there is more than one possible answer. Okay, if you just give me one, that's absolutely fine. So for example, here, I want you for this first one here, okay, if you could write that fraction, so count how many equal parts are there all together, what's your denominator, what's shaded in, okay. Then you're going to write the next one, Then you're going to write the next fraction and then what could come next. Okay, what could go there? So this one's not got any coloured in, all right, but what could you colour in on there? What fraction could it be? So what I would expect to see is 4 fractions written in your book. Okay, this one, then this one, then this one, and then it's ascending, so it's getting, the fractions are getting greater, and then you're going to tell me what could be there. Okay. Same with the second one, the green one. However, it's in descending order. So you're going to start, doesn't mean you have to write going down like that. You can still write it going across like this. Okay, you're going to start with this fraction here. What fraction is being shown? Then the fraction that's being shown here. Now, there are these two here, don't have anything coloured in. So what could have been coloured in there for those two? All right, so you're telling me 2 missing fractions there. Okay, guys, so again, I still just need to see 4 fractions for that one. Okay, fantastic. Have a go then, guys. You can pause this now. We'll go over the answers first at the start of tomorrow's lesson. All right, good luck, guys. Any problems, just give me an email. See you soon. Bye.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to your writing for today. It's Tuesday, the 28th of April. We're going to be starting our activities today like we did yesterday, trying to spot in those sentences verbs, nouns, adverbs and adjectives. So just take a second to read the screen. Remind yourselves what verbs and nouns are, because remember those are super important because they help us to find the adverbs and the adjectives as well. So nouns being naming things, and verbs being our actions, what is happening in the sentence. Okay, let's have a look at our sentences then for today. So we've got 3 sentences today. We're looking for the nouns, the adjectives, the verbs and the adverbs, and these are our sentences. So we've got Peter played the saxophone loudly in his old house. Muscles help humans to move easily. Eventually, the teacher called the noisy class to attention. So what I'd like you to do, please, is copy out the sentences in your book and label for me the nouns, the adjectives, the verbs and the adverbs in each sentence, okay? So take a moment to pause the video now and have a go at those. Fantastic, hope you all got on okay. Let's have a little look at the answers then. So let's go through them sentence by sentence. Remember, we're going to spot those nouns first, then the verbs, because the adjectives and the adverbs are linked to those, so it helps us to find those as well. So in that first sentence, Peter played the saxophone loudly in his old house. We've got 3 things named: Peter, saxophone and house. These are our nouns. Peter, saxophone, house are the names of things, okay? What is Peter doing in this sentence? Oh, he's playing, so our verb is played, okay? How did he play it is our adverb, so that's loudly. He played it loudly. And how are we describing the house? It's an old house, so old is our adjective in that sentence, okay? Let's have a look at the second sentence. Muscles help humans to move easily, okay? So we've named 2 things, muscles and humans. These are our nouns in these sentences. And what are those things doing in the sentence? Well, they're helping and they're moving. So we've got 2 verbs in this sentence. So this was a little bit more of a tricky one. There are no adjectives in this sentence, but we do have an adverb, so easily. So is it helping them easily or moving them easily? Well, it's moving them easily because it's next to that particular verb. So it's describing the movement. The movement is easy, okay? So that's our adverb in that sentence. And then finally, the third sentence, eventually the class teacher called the noisy class to attention. We've got lots and lots of nouns in this one. So we've got teacher and we've got class, which I think you all have all got. Attention is being a really clever one. If you spotted that was a noun, you've done very, very well, because it's the name of that move when you're calling everybody's attention your way. Okay, the verb being called, so the teacher called the class. We're describing that action as eventually. It took them a little bit of a long time to do it, so that's our adverb. Eventually they called them. And the class is noisy, so that's our description, so that's our adjective in this sentence as well. Hope you managed to get on okay with those. Make sure you mark them in your book if you managed to copy them out or have a think about them. And let's move on to our writing for today. Okay, so today we are going to be writing an adventure story, okay? And our adventure story is going to be based on the story of Fantastic Mr. Fox, which you've almost finished now in your guided you in your reading lessons, okay? So my first job for you today is to have a little think about each of these different sentences. They are all the story of Fantastic Mr. Fox, but unfortunately they've all been jumbled up in the wrong order. So my question is, can you order them correctly to tell the story of Fantastic Mr. Fox? So there are two ways to do this. You can copy the sentences out in order, or if you're looking for something a little bit quicker, just use the letters on the side to put them in the correct order. So I'm going to read them through with you, then we'll pause the video and you can have some time to order. So we've got Meet Mr. Fox, hero, and the mean farmers, villains. The farmers wait at the foxhole and the fox family begin to starve. The farmers are cross, so set a trap for Mr. Fox and shoot off his tail. The fox family and their friends feast underground while the farmers sit watching the foxhole. The farmers set another trap and try to dig out Mr. Fox and his family. Mr. Fox comes up with a plan to tunnel into the farmers' stores and save his family. Mr. Fox is upsetting the farmers by stealing their produce, that means their chickens and their apples, and Mr. Fox gets away and escapes underground. So what I want you to do is put that in the correct order for me. I'll give you the clue that it starts with A, so meeting Mr. Fox and the hero, who is the hero, and the farmers who are the villains. The rest of them are all out of order and you need to decide what order they go in. So pause the video now, write down your order and then come back to me and we'll go through the answers. Okay, hope you've managed to get those written down. Let's reveal those answers then. So let's see if you've got them right. So if you were doing the letters, the correct order was A, G, C, H, E, B, F and D. So let's just read through that story in order. If you were writing out the sentences, this is how it should read if you've got them correct. So first we meet Mr. Fox, the hero, and the mean farmers, the villains. Then Mr. Fox is upsetting the farmers by stealing their produce. So the farmers are cross and they decide to set a trap for Mr. Fox and shoot off his tail. But Mr. Fox gets away and he escapes underground. So then the farmers set another trap to dig out Mr. Fox and his family. The farmers wait by the foxhole and the family begin to starve. Mr. Fox comes up with a plan to tunnel into the farmers' stores and save his family. And then the fox family and their friends have that big feast underground while the farmers are still sitting there looking a bit silly and watching the foxhole. So well done if you managed to get all of that in the correct order. That was a bit of a challenge this morning. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to think about the different parts of the story because we're going to use this story to help us plan our own adventure story. So first of all, we meet the characters and we find out the problem. So in this story, we meet the characters, Mr. Fox, and the villains, the farmers, and we find out the problem. So the problem is that the farmers don't want him stealing their produce. Okay, so that's the first part of our story. The second part of our story is that the villains, the bad guys, the farmers in our case, set a trap, but the hero is too clever and he escapes. So here we go, the farmers set the trap and shoot off his tail, but Mr. Fox manages to escape. So that's the second part of our story. Okay, the third part of our story is that the villains set another trap and the hero manages to escape again. So they try and dig out Mr. Fox in this story, don't they? But his family dig even faster and they manage to escape him that way. Then the hero has a problem. So the villains are winning a little bit. They're starting to starve. So Mr. Fox, our hero in our story, has to come up with a plan. So the farmers are waiting at the foxhole trying to starve the foxes. And then Mr. Fox has to come up with a plan to escape. So he tunnels under the stores and manages to save his family. The last part of our story here is that the hero wins and the villains look a little bit foolish. Okay, so the hero wins. The Fox family is having a big feast underground. And the farmers look a bit silly because they're still watching the foxhole, even though the fox is more than happy staying underground for the rest of their lives. So that's the story. This is the structure here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that we're all going to use to plan our own stories this week. So let's have a little look how that might work. So I've planned a bit of a story that's very similar to this story that I'm going to write over the next few days. And I'm hoping that you're going to come up with today a plan to write your own story as well. So if I'm planning a story, I can draw it, or I can write a bit about it, or I can just talk to somebody about it. Whatever way works best for you. But in this one, I've decided to draw it because I thought that would work for me. So here is my story. So my hero is going to be a lark, which is a type of bird. And it's going to have a lark family, and they're going to be brave, and they're going to be fearless. And my villain in the story is going to be Mrs. Bates, the farmer's wife. And she's going to have a constant scowl on her face. She's going to have a really grumpy face. And my problem is that the bird likes to eat the corn in the cornfields and the berries on the berry bush. And she's not going to be very happy about the fact that he keeps stealing all the food. Okay? So the second part of my story is where villains set a trap and the hero escapes. So I need my first trap. What's Mrs. Bates going to do to try and trap the lark? So Mrs. Bates, here she is, feeling a bit cross. So she thinks, I know, I'm going to put a scarecrow in the cornfield and that will stop the lark from eating the corn. So that's great. It does scare the lark off, but he's far too clever, so he goes to the berry bush and eats that instead. Okay, so the hero's still winning at that point. So then my villain's going to set another trap, and the hero's going to escape again. Okay, so Mrs. Bates is still a bit cross. She's very cross indeed. So she decides, right, so we're going to put a scarecrow in the cornfield, and I'm going to put a net over the berry bush. So that's absolutely fine. The lark says, oh no, I don't know what I'm doing. What am I going to eat and feed my family today? So he goes hunting off around the garden, and he sees there's a nice big slice of walnut cake that Mr. Bates has left on the table while he went to go and fetch his cup of tea. So he eats the cake instead. So the villain's still winning at this point. So then my hero is starving and he comes up with a plan. So now Mrs. Bates is very, very, very cross. So she decides what she's going to do is not put a net over the berry bush, but she's going to put a big net over Mr. Lark's tree with his nest in it. So now Mr. Lark and his family are stuck and they can't escape, and they're very, very scared because it says here, we're hungry. So you've got baby larks who are very hungry. So Mr. Lark's going to have to come up with a plan in order to get out from under this net. So what does he do to make himself win and the villains look foolish? So him and his family are going to peck a little hole in the net. Here's my net. Here's my tiny little hole. And every night when it's quiet, they're going to creep out, go and eat the corn, eat the berry bush, eat anything else that's left over, and every morning Mrs. Bates is going to wake up super confused because she doesn't know who's stealing the food. Okay, so that's my story. Your job today is to do something very similar and come up with your own adventure story. Now you can draw it, you can write it, or you can just talk about it. So here's your plan for your adventure story that you're going to use today. Try and think about what's going to happen at each of the different stages. What traps are they going to set? What's the problem going to be? I've put you some characters here that might help you. So you might want to do a story about a slug who's eating all the lettuces. You might want to do a story about a squirrel who's eating all the nuts, or perhaps a wolf who's eating the sheep. You might want to do something like Peter Rabbit. So he goes into the garden, doesn't he, all the time at Mr. McGregor's and steals the fruit and vegetables in the garden. So you could have a Peter Rabbit and Mr. McGregor story. Or if you've ever watched the film Inside Out, the little raccoons and things, they escape into the house next door, and they actually steal the food from inside the house. So you might want to choose one of those for your characters as well. Once you've got your character and your problem, you're going to think about what traps they're going to set and how the hero escapes. Another trap and how he escapes. And then the villain's going to be winning and the hero's going to be starving. So they're going to have to come up with an even better plan. And then the hero's got to win and make the villain look foolish. So this is what I want you to do today. I'm going to pause your video. Like I said before, you can write out your plan. You can draw out your plan. You can talk to somebody about your plan. But by tomorrow, when we start our story, I want you to know exactly what kind of story you're going to be writing. So get your plan ready today. So pause the video now. And get yourself ready for your writing tomorrow, and then come back to me at the end so I can go over your CC. Okay, welcome back. I hope you managed to plan a really, really exciting story. Just to help you to double check that story, you might want to test it out with your family before you start to write it. Can they tell you, is it engaging? Does it make sense? Do exciting things happen? Do they want to carry on and know what happens in the story? So make sure you're sharing that with somebody, and then you're ready to write a really engaging and powerful adventure story tomorrow. And I can't wait to see what they turn out like. They're going to be absolutely super. And I'm going to be writing my story about the larks alongside you, so I'll be there to help you all the way through it. CC for today, we looked at yesterday, remembering that we're on that new topic, which is all about finding out about the water cycle. We've got that essential activity. So in your work packs, there are some links to some videos that tell you all about the water cycle and how it works. So we'd really like it if you could watch a couple of those. And then if you want to do something with that new learning, you've got a science experiment that you could conduct about evaporation. You could make a model or a poster about the water cycle. You could write a story about a water droplet and describe its journey through the water cycle. Or you could do that bit of a YouTuber and make yourself your own video explaining the water cycle to others. But whatever you decide to do today and whichever learning and activities you decide to do, have a wonderful, wonderful day, and we'll be back here with more learning for you tomorrow. Have a great day, guys. Bye.